What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Down Once More with Rayleigh and Matt. Today, we've got something a little bit different for you. It is just going to be me today. Life has been crazy. We've both been sick off and on vacations, all sorts of crazy stuff. So, thanks for bearing with us. We know we haven't been posting as much lately and engaging. We apologize for that. It's going to get better. We're going to get in more of a kind of groove and swing of things. But for today, I'm going to get on here and we'll see how long it goes. As you've probably all learned by now, I don't know when to just shut up. So it could be a half hour episode, could be an hour episode long. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through my current top 5 favorite musical albums. We're just going to stick with current because it changes all the time for me depending on my mood. But this is what it is for me right now. I'll give some background on my favorite songs from it, a little bit on the musical, because I'm going to have some kind of obscure picks that maybe not everyone has heard of before. I'm also going to try not to look at my notes a ton, but I do have notes for it and some history that I want to make sure I'm getting things right. So, before I get into that, I do want to recommend for anyone who's a musical fan, which I'm assuming you at least somewhat are if you're listening to this, or hopefully if you weren't before and you just tuned in to support us, hopefully we've gotten you somewhat interested in it and you're enjoying it. But they released on HBO Max, kind of basically a documentary on. They did a benefit concert of Spring Awakening last year um, during COVID. To just kind of raise some money and support the arts. And they brought back the original cast of that. Now I'm going to lose some musical theater street cred for this. I was not familiar with Spring Awakening at all before I watched this. I had heard the name, and that's about it. And the documentary, what it does is it has the cast and the creators talking about the original process of when they first created Spring Awakening and their experience performing that and kind of the journey it went on from its inception to taking off on Broadway like it did. And then it has clips from some of their original plays when they put it on back in early 2000s, and then it has clips from the concert that they did last year. And it's just a very interesting story. The musical itself has a very unique story. The cast has a very unique story. A lot of them, this was one of the first big things they did that blew up. And it's got Jonathan Groff in it, who you may know from King George and Hamilton, which we've already discussed here on the pod. He was in the show Glee. He's in the show Mindhunters. He was, oh, I don't remember the name. He was the guy with the reindeer in Frozen. I'm blanking on his name. I know the reindeer's name was Sven. But he was in that. And it has Leah Michelle, who was from Glee, and she's been in a handful of other things. This was kind of her first big break that she did. It also has Skylar Astin in it, which you would recognize from Pitch Perfect. He was Jesse in that, the main guy, I would say. And he was in, I think it was Zoe's Infinite Playlist and a few other things. And I will say, him in this, it showed clips of him singing, and he has the most insane hairdo in the original production of this because it's in, oh, I want to say like 1890 Germany or something like that. It's set in more olden timey Germany. Maybe 1980. I don't think it's that recent, but whatever. It's set in Germany a ways back in time. It's just really unique. It's definitely more of an adult thing. I mean, this podcast is kind of more of an adult thing, but it was very unique, interesting to see how that cast was really like a family and talk about one of the characters who in the play, his character commits suicide in it and has a gun to his head and everything in the play. And he talks about just, he was the first of the original cast members to leave from the production. He just talked about how he couldn't keep doing that every night and going through that, basically that emotional journey that ends in him taking his own life on stage night after night, multiple times a day. And I can't imagine having to go through that. And that, yeah, when you're embodying that character, just the effect and toll that would have on you. So highly recommend checking that out. I think it's about like an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. It's on HBO Max. Highly recommend people going and doing that. Also, bear with me. I am just a mess this week. I currently have allergies that are kicking my ass, and that has led to a tickle in my throat. It's not COVID. I've taken tests, all that fun stuff. So I apologize if you get some scratchiness or kind of coughing. Last night I decided to stab the roof of my mouth with a pretzel, and that's been bleeding, and so that's healing. And my dog decided to headbutt me before I came to record, so bear with me. We'll see what kind of difficulties we have. We will get through this. At least I will get through this. We'll see if you get through listening to it. That being said, we're going to hop in. I'm not going to do these in any particular order because that's pretty fluid. That being said, this is probably my top musical theater album right now. And I will also say there's going to be a mix here on some movie musical recordings and some original cast recordings. And I'll specify when I go through this because some of those there is a drastic difference. So first up is one that has actually not been on stage. So some people might argue it doesn't belong on this list, but I think it does. And that is In the Light, A Faustian Tale. It was released in June 2021 as a highlights album on Apple Music, Spotify, hard copy, and sheet music. But that's all that's been released on it so far. It was put together by the music and lyrics by Michael Mott, and the book was by Nathan Wright and Justin Silvestri. Now, I'm going to read kind of the synopsis of it a little bit. I'm going to get into spoilers with it. I highly recommend everyone listen to this. The cast includes Jeremy Jordan, which if you listen to this, I'm a big Jeremy Jordan fan. He will make another appearance on this list as well. Anne Fraser Thomas, Solia Pfeiffer, Aisha Jackson, Sierra Renee, Zachary James, Antonio Cipriano, Lindsay Ryder, and Bobby Conte Thornton is the main cast of that on this recording. And they all do a great job in this. They have a website. It's inthelightmusical.com. I'll link it on the YouTube, and I'll try to do it in the notes on the podcast platforms here. Highly recommend checking it out. It has a breakdown of the story on there as well that kind of goes, here's what happened in the story, here's the song, to kind of help people build that world and follow along, since it doesn't have a way for people to see it acted out and fully portrayed. I really hope they get the opportunity to do that because I would love to see this live. Basically, the story is, it says it's a contemporary spin on the epic Faustus story of greed, power, and lust. Let's skip through that. It follows Dr. Johann Faustus, an astronomer who is accused of blasphemy by the Holy Inquisition. So it's a period musical. Guided by a mysterious being called the Traveler, he flees to the small town of Hertz. There he meets a young scholarly woman named Gretchen who shares his goals. Gretchen believes Dr. Faustus can use the town to begin a rebellion against the Inquisition. Together, they create a plan to resist its coming and to overthrow the power of the church. As their plot proceeds, secrets Gretchen has hidden are discovered, and Johann's ambition is undermined by his own tormented mind. The Traveler urges the two forward, and their dysfunctions entangle, leading to disaster for all. And this album, there's not really any songs that I skip on it. And to me, that's what makes a great musical theater album. When you can listen to the whole thing front to back, keep it going. It's catchy. It can tell a story that you can kind of follow along even without being able to see it visually portrayed or already know much about it. Then that's a hit for me. That's one of the things I appreciate about Hamilton, which missed the cut on this list, is that it's a sung through musical. You can listen to just the soundtrack and get the emotion, the depth, and the character arcs in it. This isn't quite like that. That's not completely sung through, but some highlights I would definitely recommend checking out, at least even if you don't feel like listening to the whole thing, is Tomorrow Begins Today, Rise or Fall, The Man I Know. The entire cast just have outstanding voices, especially Soleil Pfeiffer and Sierra Renee and Jeremy Jordan. They just all crush it. They capture. They just all have such amazing voices. I'm not gonna say anything else about it. Just listen to it. So, In the Light of Faustian Tale, number one on my list, even though they're technically not in order, but it's number one. Number two is one that people might not have heard of either. It is Heathers the Musical, but I want to specify because there's two Broadway cast recordings that you can get on. Well, not Broadway because it's never actually been on Broadway. There's an off-Broadway recording and an official West End recording. It's had more of a run on the West End in London than it has in the States. And the official West End recording is the one that I am going to recommend. Has Carrie Hope Fletcher as the main character, Veronica, in it. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Heathers. It was a 1988 movie, not a musical, with Winona Ryder and Christian Slater. It's a very dark comedy that has Christian Slater's character and Winona Ryder's character kind of pairing up, and they end up killing the bullies in the high school, like murdering them. That's the plot of this movie. It's very dark. The musical is a little more lighthearted than that. It still follows the basic storylines. It's just not quite as dark, which led to some mixed reception and reactions to it when it first came out. But everyone in this captures the roles very well. And part of the reason I recommend the West End official recording versus the off-Broadway recording, even though everyone is outstanding on the off-Broadway recording as well, is the official West End, they reworked it over the years because this musical has had a very interesting production. It started with just a 3 kind of showing not concert, but they're kind of workshopping it without it being the official workshop. And that had Kristen Bell as Veronica, and she was the main named one in that. Then that was in 2009. Then in 2010, it did some workshops, and that was that were a concert workshop, basically read through with Jeremy Jordan and Annaleigh Ashford, as Jeremy Jordan was JD and Annaleigh Ashford was Veronica. Then it got some off-Broadway momentum, had some plays there, then moved to off the West End in London, and then got on the West End. And that's where they've been doing some tours. I have not seen that they've done any U.S. tours, has not made it back onto off-Broadway in the U.S. or on Broadway in the U.S. When it moved to the West End, they reworked some songs. There are some songs in the original recording that turn some more serious issues and a little more lighthearted. And they try to kind of change the narrative a little bit on those in the recording. And they add in the song I Say No, which is fantastic. Carrie Hope Fletcher crushes it. It's a song sung by Veronica to JD in the second act. And that's how I first discovered this, actually. On Instagram, one of the suggested for you was a Broadway page, and it had a clip of I Say No being sung. And I just heard that. I'm like, I need to hear more from this musical. And that's when I dug in and started learning more about it. And this soundtrack is now on a regular rotation in my car as well. I have a musical shuffle playlist that has my favorite songs from a number of different musical albums, and probably 70% of this album is on there. And it's good all the way through, but the standouts to me, Freeze Your Brain, which is sung by JD, I Say No, which is sung by Veronica, and then, what was some others marked here as my favorites. Oh, and Meant to Be Yours, which is sung JD towards the finale of the second act. And great songs, great emotion from everyone involved in these. Highly recommend that one as well. Now we're going to get into a little more well-known albums. I'm going to say number 3 on my list, The third one on my list is The Last 5 Years. This is the movie recording, the movie soundtrack with Jeremy Jordan and now I cannot think of her name from Pitch Perfect, Anna Kendrick. Jeremy Jordan and Anna Kendrick. This musical we haven't discussed on here yet, but we will. It's one of my favorites. It is primarily just the story of these two people. As Jeremy Jordan as Jamie Wellerstein, and then Anna Kendrick as Kathy Hyatt. There's some background characters in it. They are primarily the only two people in this. When it started out in Chicago with Norbert Leo. I'm gonna completely butcher his name too. Names are not my strong suit tonight. I'm just butchering every single one I try to say. Originally, it was started in Chicago with Norbert Leo Butts or Buttes as Jamie and Lauren Kennedy as Kathy Hyatt. This is another one that hasn't actually made it to Broadway. It was just off Broadway, then did some off West End stuff, and then actually West End stuff. Interesting fact, Norbert Leo Butts, he was the original Fiyero in Wicked, and he also played Roger in Rent on Broadway for a while. But this story is basically about the rise and fall of this relationship, this 5-year relationship. People can get lost on it. I've had people who've started the movie. I started the movie at first and I was lost and I didn't get through it for the first time I tried it, which doesn't sound like a great selling point. But the main thing with this story is whenever Kathy, Anna Kendrick, is singing, the story is being told from the end of their relationship to the beginning. And whenever Jeremy Jordan is singing on the soundtrack as Jamie, it is from the beginning of the relationship to the end. So on stage, these people never directly interact until in the middle of the story, the wedding song and scene, they interact with each other in the play and then they go their own ways. Now in the movie, obviously, it's adapted more visually and you see them more together. But this soundtrack, Anna Kendrick's voice is great. Jeremy Jordan's voice is great. They both have so much emotion in these roles. And as they're just singing these songs, it seems like it's real for them. This is it's not a happy musical, spoiler alert, but it seems real. Neither one of them are really necessarily the right. It's portrayed neither one of them are necessarily right or wrong, though you can make an argument that Jamie's more in the wrong with gaslighting or things like that. But it's like these are things that happen in real relationships. In fact, the creator of the musical, Jason Robert Brown, it's pretty closely follows his relationship with his ex-wife, and she sued him because she said it was too similar. So they ended up, for him to kind of get out of the lawsuit some, he changed one of the songs that's in the beginning, that I Could Be in Love with Someone Like You, to Shik's a Goddess, because he changed the Kathy character from being Irish Catholic in the original telling of it, which his ex-wife was, to now that's not as heavily there, and Jamie's character is Jewish. So it's very interesting. Highly recommend listening to it, although I understand it's one that's not going to be for everyone. All right, moving on. We're going to go to another movie version of a soundtrack, and that is Tick, Tick, Boom. We discussed Tick, Tick, Boom in our last full episode on here. I loved it more than Rayleigh did, and I love the soundtrack, and I love Andrew Garfield, Vanessa Hudgens, and just everyone in this cast. Their voices are so good, even though Andrew Garfield, his voice is kind of more raw and not as trained. I love it on here. I love the arrangements that Lin-Manuel Miranda did um, for the movie that kind of update some of the songs. I like the inclusion of the different kind of breakdown of Green Green Dress. I'm glad we still get the full version of Green Green Dress on the soundtrack as well. They released the Superbia medley. I think it's called the Sextet medley on the soundtrack that you can hear that, which was one of the more fun songs in that musical that we didn't even really talk about much in the episode. But I love that that's available and that that's an option. And then um, the only thing that I do miss from it is I do really like the song Sugar. That is from the original play that we kind of discussed in the last episode. But I really like that song. It's a fun song, clever. So I kind of miss that on the soundtrack, but I'm still going to go with the movie version of the soundtrack versus the original Broadway recording. Even though that original cast recording is also fantastic, and you can get that on Apple Music, Spotify, all that fun stuff as well. All of these soundtracks are available on there and highly recommend everyone check them out. Um, but yeah, my favorites from Tick Tick Boom are Johnny Can't Decide, Louder Than Words, and then Come to Your Senses. 3090 is another great one, but I think Johnny Can't Decide is just my favorite one. I just love that song so much. Um, and it's on all my playlists as well. Capping out my top five is a play that we have not discussed yet on here, and that is Dear Evan Hansen. This one, I'm sticking with the original cast recording soundtrack. The movie adds a couple songs. One of them I really enjoy, the anonymous ones. The other one is eh. And then they just take out too many of my favorite songs from the movie, which that'll be a fun episode when we discuss that because I have lots of strong feelings about the Dear Evan Hansen movie. So stay tuned for that. Um, yeah, the original soundtrack is so good. Ben Platt does, I don't know if this is a compliment or not, but he does such a good job capturing the anxiety and emotion of Evan Hansen and that character, just that he's able to just portray and pour out in his voice and in these songs that you can feel the emotion and just feels real. It doesn't feel wooden. I feel like a lot of times you can get cast recordings and you can tell they're not as into it, but they're not fully acting out. But this, I feel like they just all nail it. The entire cast is great. And it's another one where I love all except like two songs on the soundtrack. Um, it's so good. And even those two that I don't love, I still don't have to skip. It's not like I hate them with a burning passion or anything like that. And some of my highlights, my favorite songs on there are You Will Be Found, Waving Through a Window, and Good for You. Which Good for You is one of the songs that was cut from the movie that I was very upset about. So those are my top five right now, my current ones. It changes all the time. So we got In the Light, Faustian Tale. We have Heathers, the musical, the official West End recording. We have The Last 5 Years, the movie soundtrack with Jeremy Jordan and Anna Kendrick. We have Tick Tick Boom movie with Andrew Garfield, Vanessa Hudgens, and I have to look up that for the lady that sings "Come to Your Senses" because I can't believe I'm blanking. Alexandra Shipp. Put some respect on her name because I feel bad because I forgot her earlier too. Alexandra Shipp has such a powerful voice and just crushes everything in that movie too. So extra respect, Alexandra Shipp. And then fifth, we have Dear Evan Hansen, the official Broadway soundtrack. So those are my five. Comment below what your top five are. Or if you're not a big musical person, you don't have a top five, tell me what your favorite musical theater album will be. I know I could get a lot of heat. I don't have main classics on here. I'm missing Les Mis. I'm missing I mean, Hamilton's not that old as a classic, but I don't have Hamilton on here. There's so many good ones. These are the ones we've kind of talked about before. I kind of prefer the more modern musicals and more smaller scale musicals. That's kind of what clicks for me and I resonate with. Um, I should have said at the beginning, I'm not for this list too. I'm not counting Disney ones. I debated putting a Goofy movie soundtrack on here because that has some certified bangers with Eye to Eye and Stand Out, the two Powerline songs. Those are great songs, and they knew they were great songs because they had where you could only get them if you bought the fucking album on iTunes. So they knew what they were doing. Got to put the best songs on there and trick people into buying the whole album. But After Today's on there, great. The one where Max is singing when he's gonna go get Roxanne, great. Just all around, great movie. Best Disney movie ever. Best Disney soundtrack ever. Um, so that's my Disney honorable mention on here. Ultimately, thanks for tuning in. I ended up keeping it under half an hour. Thanks for tuning in. Stay with us. We will be getting our episode on West Side Story out first week of July is what we're doing. We're still trying to stick with the monthly right now until we can get things kind of figured out, lined up. We're going to just be doing monthly episodes. Eventually hope to move into every other week. And then who knows, in an ideal world, every week would be great. Right now, we both have full-time jobs, families, everything like that that's going on. Crazy world. This is just something we're doing for fun because we enjoy it and hope you guys are too. But help us out a ton. If you like, subscribe, comment, engage with us, share us. If you know people who like it, share the podcast, share our Instagram, share our Twitter. I don't post on there a ton, but it looks really sad when our Twitter only has 6 followers. So even though I don't post much, that means I'm not going to be bugging you a bunch on there. But if you have a Twitter, go follow at Down Once More Pod. So at least the numbers look more respectable. I want to get those numbers up. Love to get more subscribers on the YouTube. We're sitting at 20 right now. We get 100, which is a long ways to go. That's our next goal. Then we can get our own URL that makes it easy to search and share and all that fun stuff. So, like, comment, subscribe, rate us on Spotify, Apple, all those things. Helps us out a ton. Appreciate you all being here, bearing with us. Trying to be more active and posting more. Apologize. I'll take responsibility for that. But hope you're all doing great. Don't forget to go down once more. Jamie Wellerstein, and I'm just completely screwing up everything with Anna Kendrick's character in this because now I cannot remember. Dun, 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 dun. Thank God for editing.